Seeing it's 6 p.m., I'd like to call the January 5th, 2022 regular meeting of the Kenai City Council to order. And if you're able, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Welcome, everybody. Good to see everybody out here this evening. Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Glendenning,
Here.
Councilmember Baisden,
Here.
Councilmember Sonart,
Here.
Councilmember Petty,
Here.
Councilmember Winger,
Here.
Councilmember Naxted,
Here.
Mayor Gabriel.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next up, we have agenda approval. Councilmember Naxted. Oh, yeah. Was there? Oh, there was buried. I didn't see that. I got it. Thank you. All right, before we get to agenda approval, council, I'd like to draw your attention to the laydown you should have in front of you with requested additions to the packet. Action, add to item D5, item ordinance number 3265-2021. October 18, 2021, discussion item Kenai Dog Park, requested by Councilmember Petty. Action, add to item J1, land management plan requested information. Memo requested by the city manager. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you. I move to approve the agenda with the two action item additions, D5 and J1. Request unanimous consent.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Next up, we have the consent agenda. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move for approval of the consent agenda and request unanimous consent.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the body that'd like to amend the consent agenda at this time? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please read the consent agenda into the record?
Approval of the regular meeting minutes from December 15th, 2021, brought to you by the city clerk. New business, approval of bills to be ratified, brought to you by the administration. Approval of non-objection to marijuana license transfer for Herban Extracts LLC, brought to you by the city clerk. Approval of non-objection to a liquor license renewal for Country Liquor, Walmart, Supercenter, and American Legion Post 20, brought to you by the city clerk. Approval of a special use permit to Schillings Alaska Inc., DBA The Uptown Motel for snow storage, brought to you by the administration. And introduction of ordinance number 3266-2022, accepting and appropriating funds in the airport fund and accepting 2 grants from the Federal Aviation Administration under the America Rescue Plan Act of 2021, HR 1319, Public Law 117-2, brought to you by the administration. And that is your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to read, to testify to anything on the consent agenda, which was just read into the record? Seeing none, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. And just for housekeeping, if there's no objection from council, there was a request under ordinance number 3265-2021, which is the Kenai Dog Park ordinance, request to have 10 minutes instead of the 3 that are allocated. Just want to give you a heads up on that. This evening, we have no scheduled public comment. That brings us to unscheduled public comment. Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to address the council at this time on any item that is not on the agenda or consent agenda? Ms. Nelson.
Marion Nelson, 44629 Tower Hills Street. I'm here as president of the Art Guild, Art Center, and there's no more Art Guild. What am I saying? It's just the Art Center. Anyway, we should have a card, and this is our new rack card. I'll have them available to hand them out to other people too. And just to invite you that we have our first show of 2022. It's Zeris Vanderveer, which a number of you people know. She's been here for quite a while. She's a long-time artist and a very productive one at that. And this show is a great example of just how productive she can be. She's been working on this variety of paintings and this and three-dimensional work for the past 2 years, so it's a big show. And it is actually open today, but more formally opens tomorrow, and the opening reception is tomorrow night, 5 to 7. There'll be some refreshments, there'll be a little bit of music, and Zeris will give a artist talk at 6 o'clock. So if you can make it over there, that'll be fine. If not, it'll be up for the month, 12 to 5, Wednesday through Saturday. And we are, Brian, you'll be especially interested in this, Mary Gabriel, rather. We have been working with Cannon River Brewing for some time to come up with a jail ale, because we do have a jail in the back of that building, historic jail. And so we've been, talking to him, came up with a great logo. Our executive director, Alex Rudninsky, is an incredible artist, and so it's clever, it's fun, and we will have an opening next month that will also have that beer in the jail, in the back, with all the permits necessary and so forth and so on. So any questions about any of that, I'm open to.
Council, any questions of Councilmember Petty?
Yes, Bernice?
Yes, thank you, Marion. I was looking over this most robust schedule for 2022. One of the things that I didn't see is the mural exhibition.
At the end.
At the very end. Oh, I beg your pardon, please, excuse me. I
That's-
was looking at it sometimes else, so my mistake. Thank you so very much for pointing that
Oh,
out.
I'm glad you asked about it. We had a great mural this year, and I'm particularly proud of that. It's my baby, so to speak, and it's so fun. 2 years ago, just before we closed, they had, the artists who participated had 3 days. This year, they had 1 week. In other words, they had 2 weekends. So it's a lot of dedication for them to do that, but it's a lot of fun, too, and it's an experience that they're just not going to have anyplace else. And as far as the mural goes, it's a unique mural for sure, in that we had a lightweight canvas this year. When we did this the first time, it was Tyvek, donated Tyvek from SBS. Thank you very much, but it was tough to work on, and we cut it off the wall in the end. So this time it was lightweight canvas, stapled it up. I've just gone through taking all that off the wall, repainting the whole gallery yet again. That's just part of dealing with the gallery, the nail holes, the staple holes, whatever else goes into it. And so new paint on the walls again, fresh walls, new show, starting another year. We'll see what happens this year at the end of the year when it comes to the mural. There's always a discussion of, do we want a theme, do we not want a theme? We've not had one so far, but yet to be decided. Maybe you have your 2 cents worth on that. Anything else?
Councilmember Winger?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Thank you, Ms. Nelson. I just want to say that after your last time you came and spoke to the council about the murals, my son and I had gone down to Seward for swim competition. We actually went around the town looking for the murals, and we just appreciate you talking about that and bringing that to our attention. It gave us something fun to do, so thank you.
Yeah, Seward has done an absolutely stellar
They
job
have.
with their mural project, which is decades old at this point, and a ton of experience, which I alluded to, expanded on last time I talked to you. So,
Thank you.
anything else? I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Marion. Is there anybody else from the general public that'd like to speak to the council at this time on any item that is not on the agenda or consent agenda? Is there anybody online, Madam Clerk?
I see no hands raised. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to item D1, public hearings. First up, we have ordinance number 3261-2021, accepting and appropriating a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services to the Department of Education and Early Development, Division of Library, Archives, and Museums for the purchase of a hold locker. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3261-2021.
I'll second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3261-2021? Anybody online, Madam Clerk?
Anyone on Zoom can raise their hand or unmute themselves. I see no hands raised.
Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Deliberation comments from council. Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I noticed that Katja was in the audience, and I was just wondering if she could explain to us exactly how these lockers pick up. It works. Is there a code that they put in? Is it an app that they use? Maybe she could explain that a little more for us.
Through the city manager, Ms. Concha, would you like to expand on the design and function of these?
I would love to. So when the patron places a hold, they can decide whether they want to pick it up in the library or in the hold locker. We get the information and we put the item or the items in the hold locker. They get immediately notified that something is in the hold locker for them, and we haven't quite decided yet, between 3 days and 7 days to pick up their items. They get to the library, they have a code, and there's even an app, so they can just push a button and the door opens up, they pick up their items, it's a 5-second deal. They close the door and they're done. So it's very, very convenient and very efficient.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I think that's just a great upkeep, very new technology, so it'll be exciting to see that feature added to our library, so thank you.
Any further discussion? So I just thought of clarify. I think like you see these in Home Depot, and that's kind of the same type of deal, I suspected. Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Wenger?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. That passes.
Thank you. Council, we're now on item D2, ordinance number 3262-2021, accepting and appropriating a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services passed through the Department of Education and Early Development, Division of Library, Archives, and Museums for the purchase of STEAM kit, shelving, library material, and other items. And I think STEAM would stand for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math, I believe. So it's the acronym, which is an acronym for that. So, pleasure, Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3262-2021.
I'll second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3262-2021 at this time? Is there anybody online, Madam Clerk?
Any person on Zoom can unmute themselves or raise their hands. No hands are raised.
Thank you. Seeing no testimony from the public, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council. Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I just have one question. I'm looking here at program equipment. For us Luddites, what are amplifiers and the canopy tent going to be used for? Just so I know.
Through the city manager, Ms. Concha.
So voice amplifiers are just little microphones that we can use outside. So we'd like to expand and in the summer have story times outside. But, the more, the more people, the better it is to have those amplifiers. And the tents are, they're again for outdoor programming. We have one, we need another one.
Thank you.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes, I'd just like to thank Ms. Wolf for the proactive opportunity to get these grant monies so as to better our community library. Also, I know that the library sponsored an astronomy opportunity, and I'm sure that amplifier would come in splendid for that, and I hope to see more of those. I think there's great interest in that, so thank you for providing that, and thank you for your work on the grants.
Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I will be supporting this, and I just want to say thank you, Katja, for bringing this forth. STEM programs are huge in our schools. I know at Mountain View Elementary, it's a very limited amount of items they have, and they often have kids on wait list. I know my kids are on a waiting list for it. I know it's super popular, and the kids that get into it in an elementary level tend to stay with it all the way through their education. So I just think this is great to bring this into our community and expand on that. There is a need for it, so thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted,
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. That ordinance passes.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Next up, we have item D3, ordinance number 3263-2021, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the general fund, police department, and accepting grants from the United States Department of Justice, Alaska Municipal League Joint Insurance Association for the purchase of ballistic vests. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3263-2021.
I'd second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3263-2021? Is there anybody online?
Any person on Zoom can unmute themselves or raise their hand. I see no hands raised.
Thank you. With that, we'll bring it back to council. Comments from council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to amend this third whereas and replace the word 3 with 5. Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection?
Does it need a second?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please. Second.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that amendment is approved. We now have before us ordinance number 3263-2021 as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Baisden,
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Councilmember Winger,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted,
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance number 3263-2021 as amended passed.
Thank you. Next up, we have ordinance number 3264-2021, accepting and appropriating asset forfeiture funds provided to the city of Kenai through the State of Alaska Department of Public Safety. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3264-2021.
I'll second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3264-2021? Is there anybody online?
For those attending through Zoom, you can unmute yourself or raise your hand. No hands are raised.
Thank you. With that, we'll bring it back to council. Discussion from council, deliberation. Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yes, I'm well pleased with the memo given by Police Chief and explains very well how these funds are to be used. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Naxted.
I concur with Vice Mayor Glendenning, and I just want to say that, nearly $29,000 is a pretty good chunk of change. That's great. Thanks.
Very good. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Councilmember Winger,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted,
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance 3264-2021 has passed.
Thank you. Council, we're on item D5, ordinance number 3265-2021, increasing estimated revenue and appropriations in the general fund and Parks Improvement Capital Project Fund for additional Kenai Dog Park funding. Pleasure, council. Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, just a point of order. Were we going to have a presentation at some point on this item?
Yeah,
too?
we just need to move it.
Okay.
Move it to the.
All right, I move we approve ordinance number 3265-2021.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public like to speak to ordinance number 3265-2021? I do believe we have some folks here that would like to speak to it, and as I stated earlier, generally we allow 3 minutes for the this portion, but we will provide
got 3.
for 10 minutes. Nope, we're
I've
gonna.
got 10.
Yes, we're gonna, and we'll give you a little.
My name is Connie Hocker.
Oh,
Connie, I believe, was going to speak for 3 minutes, and Crystal was giving the presentation for 10.
oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know if it was a combined. Okay, yeah,
Quite
like I
all
said,
right. I only need 3 minutes.
you need 10 minutes.
I need 3.
Okay, just for
Okay, I've already
clarification.
lost one.
Okay, very good. Okay.
My name is Connie Hocker, and I'm the coordinator and kind of the originator of the Three Friends Dog Park in Soldotna. And I wanted to come here tonight to encourage the city to move this forward. This is an amazing opportunity for your community, for all of us on the Kenai Peninsula. We have folks that come from all over just to visit Soldotna Dog Park, the Three Friends Dog Park. It's definitely a labor of love, and it's an ongoing project. The community has really stepped up as far as taking care of it, monitoring it, keeping it clean, but in conjunction with the city. And this park, like all of your parks in Kenai and Soldotna, fold right into the mold of your other parks. It's basically handled the same way. Your Parks and Recs, our Parks and Recs department takes good care of it. They empty the garbages, that type of thing. The police, I see you guys are looking at appropriating the $63,000 for these particular items, and I read through them. The police, as far as providing security, your park will just fold right in. One of the things that was one of the big concerns is security and what happens in a dog park. What if somebody gets bit? All of these things. And, we've went through those growing pains, and it's not that it ends someday. It's like any of the other parks. If somebody gets hurt, it's handled however. If the police get involved, then they handle it how their ordinances dictate. But as far as the funds for this, I think that it's huge. I think it's needed. We do have, I see that you've put in provisions for ADA, and that also is huge. I have a lot of apartment buildings, and I have a lot of seniors who can't get their dog to do it themselves. So we have a smaller area. We have access for them. And one thing I didn't see on here, and it's something to keep in mind in the future, and again, you're in it to win it. This park is amazing. It's going to be, here for years to come. Think about a cover too in the future. I don't know, Crystal's probably already done that. But we had frozen gates. We couldn't get in and out, because of our weather. We had, so we built a cover. And once this is up and going to a certain point, businesses are extremely generous about stepping up and donating. Home Depot came in and, Spenard Builders donated the wood for that cover over there. The city also, the city and the Rotary Club, some of you might be involved with Rotary, they also come and help build it. So it's just, it's a great place for dogs, and it's a great place for dog owners. So with that.
Thank you, Ms. Hawker. Would you mind taking questions or comments?
Absolutely. If you guys have questions, I'd be happy to help.
Councilman Warrior.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Thank you, Connie, for coming. And I just want to say thank you for all your efforts. I know you've really spearheaded the Soldotna Park, and you've been very much involved in partnering with the city of Kenai. And I just appreciate your willingness to support our dog park and work with them, because you do have that experience. You've gone through all those growing pains, as you stated. So your knowledge is very much beneficial for us. Bringing forth just having coverage over the gates might be a key thing for us to consider. So I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? I do have one. Do you happen to, and if you don't, that's fine, but do you happen to know about the approximate square footage or size of the park there in Soldotna?
We're about 1.5 acres. So
Again, we're about 50% of what the original park is. The other side is the children's side. So we actually split the park to become half of the dog park
Okay.
from the children's play area. And we got about an acre and quarter to 2/4.
Okay, very good, thank you.
But it's plenty, it is big enough, and I know yours is bigger. And it's great.
Well, I think that's kind of where we're going. It's not quite there, but that's kind of one of the issues we're working through on here is the actual footprint. So that's where I was curious and just wanted to make sure that that accommodated the
Absolutely.
needs of the folks over there that are using that one.
And it seems to, and if you're at the park at any point, they're constantly come and going. It's a constant cycle. I see, and what it's done is it's created a lot of community bonding. I mean, there's a lot of folks that I may not know their name, but I know their dog's name. You know, and it's been a really good experience for folks. And a lot of our folks are from Kenai, and they're excited.
Okay,
They're excited.
very good, thank you. Councilmember Naxton.
Just clarification, you say our dog park, the fenced-in area is larger than yours? Or
Your dog park, meaning the
Kenai one,
the one
yes,
for Kenai, yeah. Is yours fenced yet?
kinda.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. I didn't think you were quite there. Are you taking in any of the water feature in that? I don't think so.
Not within the fence area there, but there would be a walkway to the water there. Yep.
Sure, like I said, Crystal will cover that. But yes, I do believe yours is larger, but it seems to ours seems to accommodate a constant flow.
Okay. Yeah, and that's sort of was on to get the perspective of maybe not what
Absolutely.
your size, but making sure that whatever size yours was accommodated the.
And we are
okay.
busy. We try to hold events too. We want, you know, I guess I'm done with my time, but
You're fine. No.
there's, you know, I'm sorry, the Great Alaska Stuffy Hunt. We've done where we put like 100 stuffed animals in the park, and the dogs have to go get them and bring them up and drop them, and they win prizes, and those are all donated by by the Cadre Feed and those types of things. So there's a lot of events that bring the community together. And like I said, we have a lot of them that are from Kenai. Seward has dedicated land to a dog park in the future, so that's already been done. So it's nice to see you guys step up, and like I said, this is not this is an ongoing labor of love, and the community, it will benefit you guys greatly.
Okay. Councilmember Petty?
Yes, thank you so very much for your insight that you shared with us. Do you have any idea about what the estimated cost of the Soldotna Dog Park was and how it was financed?
Absolutely. The overall cost, I believe we were at around 145, and I'm guesstimating, but a lot of things were donated. So, like the cover, I always said, once I get a fence, I've got a dog park, and that happened. People can't get the concept with just an open spot. So once they saw that, they realized that this is a real thing. So the businesses really came online with things. A memorial section is going in next year. This year, I guess I should say. That is going to be donated by Davis Block. I used to give them loans back in the day, so now I'm calling them in. But as far as there was an estate that started, kind of helped get the ball rolling. After years, they found me an old article in the paper, and they wanted to benefit animals. So there was a dollar amount, about $75,000 or so, given from the estate. And from that point, the city dedicated funds over from Parker Park. You're all familiar with where that's at, Senior Center in Soldotna. Parker Park, the seniors didn't want there was supposed to be a band stage out there and, event stage. Well, they didn't want the noise. So we got those funds, and I believe that was about $45,000. And like I said, all of the equipment inside of there, it's all come from donations. Everything you see inside of that park, the city does maintain it. We just lost a bunch of trees. We're going to be doing a memorial tree rebuilt, as the volunteer group. Your volunteer group is your heart, literally your heart. And if you take care of them, you know, and give them enough freedom to make this park great. It'll be nice. So hopefully that answered some of your questions. The fence was very expensive. Did you guys get your fence donated, or was that a expenditure? I know Home Depot was on board at one point. Crystal will probably attest to that.
No, it was paid for. There was a grant through
Okay,
but
okay,
it was
so you
through
guys-
the
okay.
Kenai Community
That
Foundation
was
partially.
one of our big expenditures, is putting in a fence, and a security fence at that, because it has to be dug down and material or grading underneath so the dogs don't dig out. And so, you're welcome.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hawk. Was there any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Could I just have a moment to contact the clerk? I think someone needs to get on here. I want to make sure she has the number.
Oh, okay.
Do you have Al
Thank-
Hall there?
Thank you, Ms. Hawker. Appreciate it.
I do not see a hall on there.
Okay. Can we take a break?
You'll take a 5-minute at ease here.
I'll get my phone turned on.
You're live.
And call our meeting back to order, and we have Mr. Hull online now, is that correct? Okay,
Yes, sir.
thanks, Al. So we're on ordinance,
Thank you.
D5, ordinance number 3265-2021, public testimony, and I believe we have someone that's going to give us a presentation.
There are several other members here to make statements. Would you like the presentation first?
Either way, what would work best for you
I'm
guys?
gonna go first.
Okay.
I think we're gonna. Hello, my name is Crystal. I'm with the Kenai Dog Park Committee. We're gonna go just quickly through this. I don't want to take up a whole bunch of your time. There's like 26 slides on here, and I'm hoping you all have a copy. It's very wordy, and I don't think that all of those words are something that you need to consider in your ordinance today. I would just like to touch on a couple of things. Can we go to, I think it's slide 4. There's nothing up here quickly. I need section 1.2, project goals. So when we first started this park, well back several years ago, these were the goals that were listed in the park, was to provide fenced-in areas, different types of space for different animal needs, provide human space that is covered, welcoming and inviting space with seating, provide space that has been seated and is accessible to all beyond the gate. Can't read that spot there. To all beyond the gate with groups of vegetation planted while providing a sanitary environment, which may include plastic dog tag dispensers, to provide rules and regulations for each section of the park, and then to provide a financially sustainable plan that addresses all facets of the space in perpetuity. So where we're at now, go forward 2 slides. Another one, sorry. So right now, this is our current status. So we began fencing in the fall. All these dotted lines here are lines that don't actually have fence in them, but the poles are up. This is the rough shape and area of our dog park. There is 6-foot fence along the back wall. That's completely fenced in the back there, and there's some. Our gated area, if you notice, is at the bottom left corner of your screen, and that's going to be our entrance. So we halted operations when we saw where the fence was going in. It appears that there was some miscommunication over where the fence should have gone in the initial area of where that should go. So we stopped them putting it in for fear that if they went ahead and did the work and we needed to change that in the future, it wasn't going, it was going to end up costing us more money. The current area encompasses nearly 40,000 square feet. It has been virtually completely cleared. So I'm going to come up here. This area is our small dog park here. There's some trees right here, and that's it. So the rest is all lawn. So if you remember from our initial concept plan, and you probably don't have that in front of you, the concept plan allowed for trees and vegetation, as we have in our goals, and it also gave a pathway through those to walk through, because dogs will want to chase each other and pee on trees because that's what dogs do. We don't have that option anymore. This is a substantial hit to what we've promised the community, and we're looking at ways to change that. Let's go on ahead and go forward to section 4, please. So this is the original here, where it provided this entire section fenced in, the whole thing fenced in. It's important to note that in this concept plan that was provided to us by the Rivers and Trails people, none of this was to scale. They provided a scale but didn't give us actual measurements. So it didn't actually look like this. So this option isn't available anymore. These trees don't exist, so there is no trail that comes through this way. Next slide. slide, please. So with the Triumphant Theater going in right next door, this is our parcel map here. And we have this little area here. So the green markers that you see are the current fenced area. This is not to scale, of course, this is estimated and drawn on. We're going to propose, since we cannot expand either way, we need to stay in the same parcel, that we stay and be able to extend our footprint just a little bit. It's 40 feet at the top here. We can't get exact measurements right here in the wintertime. There are snow drifts and snow, which makes it really hard to get in there and actually get you 100% accurate measurement. I believe we are asking for some land use changes. Next slide, please. Or will be here in the near future. These are some preliminary measurements that were taken with a digital tape measure that we can get while we're out there. And this is more accurate representation of what we're looking at now with what's currently out there, and not extending, you know, any farther to the north, because that's where the theater is going, or to the west. So with that comes other things that we're going to be responsible for and other things we're going to be able to do. Like, you can't just fence in that area and then just call it like, okay, going ahead, dogs, and run through that area. You'd have to go through there and do some groundwork. You'd have to go through and do some brush clearing and just make sure that it's safe for the dogs to come through. That's something that, of course, the volunteer committee would take care of. What would happen is our cost of fencing would increase substantially. At first estimate, it looks like about 636 feet of additional fencing. Based on the invoice for the fencing that we've already paid, we can estimate that to be $17,490. However, that figure does not include what we've already paid for, because we've already paid for this entire side. Whether you put, this is the old fence line, and that's what we're asking for, what we will be asking for is the new fence line. We've already paid for all of the structure that already goes there. So we, you know, and volunteers can definitely pick up and move those posts. Moving a post when they're not set in concrete isn't that big deal. Sorry, I just totally lost my place. I don't want to go into the design elements so far. The things that I wanted to specifically talk about right there, actually. We're talking about surfacing. This is definitely part of what your ordinance discusses. We're talking about surfacing such as our ADA compliance coming into the dog park. In case you haven't been there, when you come up and you drive, it's hard to see now, but even now with the snow drifts there, you actually are going down a hill off of the parking lot, down a hill into the park. That is definitely more than a 5% grade. So as part of our phase 2, we're going to ask that the city take responsibility for making sure that we can meet ADA standards with that, and not just that grade, but also the surface itself has to be passable by a wheelchair or a stroller or something with wheels so they don't get bogged down there. Next slide. Let's actually go to section 4.3. I'm sorry, I'm skipping around. I want to utilize the time right. So lighting and safety is definitely part of public safety and risk management. We need to provide light. You don't want people running around out there in the dark. You don't want dogs running around out there in the dark. But also it provides a sense of security to the people that are coming to your park. You know, it's a well-lit area. It's a fun and friendly space. That's where I want to go. Your security cameras, honestly, that's really your choice. You know, we want to make sure that we can provide that safety and security to our patrons. If there's a dog-on-dog incident or a dog-on-human incident or something nefarious is happening out there at night, being able to have eyes on that for liability issues is definitely something that I think the city should consider. Going ahead and switch up to 4.3 accessibility. Next. One more. right there. So these are some accessibility guidelines for ADA. It is not necessary, but the necessary parts are that 5% grade. We need to make sure that the handles of our gate meet and the kick plates meet the requirements for the ADA. I think that Kenai we have an amazing senior community here locally, and I think a lot of people who have disabilities or who are seniors who have pets would also like the opportunity to be able to experience the dog park. My cousin has been wheelchair bound for most of her life. She doesn't have a dog, her daughter does, and she wants to be able to go out and do things, and there's just a limited number of things that you can't go walk your dog on the beach if you have a wheelchair. You know, it's just not something that you can do. So being able to provide that to something, I think that that's a very unique thing that we can offer our residents that they don't already have access to anywhere else. So I think let's go on ahead and move to phase 1. I'm going to run out of time. Very quick. So phase 1, all of these items are being done for the most part by your volunteers. These are things that our group is going to be responsible for. We are going to finish the fundraising for all of these things. We are going to install all of these things in cooperation with the city. We've got some really good communication going now. Very grateful for that. Next slide, please. Can I have just 2 more minutes?
Yes, please continue.
Phase 2 is where the city comes in. Essentially, after phase 1, we'd be turning the keys over to the city, and this is what we would be asking. We need the city to take over for lights, security cameras, ADA accessibility, and our water feature. And the reason for these things is because these require expertise that your volunteers can't do. I'm a paralegal. I am definitely not going to go and build your ADA accessible walkway or learn about, building a well or plumbing. And while we have many volunteers with various talents, this is something that you're going to be responsible for. I think you're going to want to ensure the city that it's done right. So this ordinance that has been proposed, this money that's coming in, I know that there's a lot of talk about, well, if you're going to fundraise for all of that other stuff, you can do that. These are the capital projects that we're talking about here. Lights, security cameras, ADA accessibility, and water features. Getting light posts out there and installed, security cameras and monitoring. Your ADA accessibility, that could look like crushed gravel or concrete coming all the way down there. That could be expensive. Water feature, it could be as simple as putting in a hand pump, or it could be, more of what the community wants, where they have access to water and their dog has access to water. So when we're looking at this ordinance, these are the projects that we would want that money to go to, and I think that that's what's proposed. Phase 3, please. Thank you. Our final phase is kind of a cooperation here. This is where basically the park is set up and we're going to finish up with, decoration. Really, it's the pretty phase, is we're going to make it look nice. We're going to finish up memorial features, some extra benches. I think that Scott is going to help us work on a paw tree, which is going to commemorate all of our volunteers and our donors who have done just amazing things for us. Potentially some picnic tables. There has been some talk that they want those out there. I'm gonna, leave that up to the community and the community to decide. Agility equipment comes in phase 3. All of the things that aren't necessary to make it work, but the things that we can do to make it a better, positive experience. All of that funding would be provided through donations and in-kind services that are donated to us. The only thing that the city of Kenai would be responsible for there is the maintenance of the facility itself. And just like Ms. Hawker said, it's just going to fold right back into with all of your other parts, routine waste management, lawn care, and things like that as it comes through. And with that, I'll let you do the rest of the reading yourselves.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Thank you, Crystal, for coming and speaking again in front of our council. One question I had was on the security and lighting. Does Soldotna currently have cameras at their park? How many cameras do they have?
We have at least two,
There are
right?
two,
Okay.
Okay.
two sets. They are not community accessible. You can't go on. A lot of folks ask for that.
Okay.
Can I go on and see if anybody's at the park? Right now, it is tied strictly to, with city access only.
Okay.
And so, but, and if I may say, lighting, we are under lighted. I mean, we live in Alaska and, you know,
But the second half of their park is also wooded, so their front half is cleared and their back half is wooded, so it's half and half, the way that ours was planned to be. Right now, we have that full lawn area. It's not gonna take, 6 lights to light up a giant lawn like that.
Councilman Winger?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. And then just looking at the updated sheet that you gave us, it looks like there's still for pending funds, $10,000 that's pending from the Community Foundation.
That is correct. So for our pavilion, we actually had blueprints drafted for a very nice covered space. It's beautiful, it really is, but we don't actually have an estimate on what that's going to cost us, I don't think yet. I think that what had been requested from the community, or the Kenai Community Foundation, was $10,000 for supplies and materials. And I believe that we're going to ask the Builders Association to actually help us put that together, because they're going to be able to read the blueprints better than a group of volunteers would, or at least somebody to coordinate from them to help us, but we're asking, I believe, for supplies and materials with that. As far as I know, it's just a rough estimate that the company who sent us the blueprint gave. So that hasn't been approved, as far as I'm aware.
Councilman Winger?
So at this time, the $10,000 hasn't been approved or allocated from the Kenai Community Foundation for that. So that cost could be added into
Yes,
the final cost need then.
The full cost of the pavilion could be added into what we're doing ourselves, but we're hopeful. And that's why I put those asterisks in there. This is all things, they are expensive. We're also hoping to get a lot more donations. We're also hoping to sell every one of our raffle tickets. We have a lot of hope that we're weighing on.
Thank you. I appreciate you answering the questions and working so hard on this.
You're welcome.
Any further questions or comments? Councilmember Naxton?
Thanks, Crystal. Do you have a square footage requirement for your pavilion,
We do.
X by X?
I don't, we have the actual blueprints. So what you have in front of you for the presentation is really a rough draft. As we started reworking on that, it's supposed to actually be in your appendix, attached to that, the actual blueprints for it. I don't have a copy of it with me. It's the one thing I didn't print out, but I had planned on emailing the entire council the updated version of the plan once it's finalized. It'll have all of those appendices with it.
Thank you. I think I have a copy, but I didn't know what the square footage was, but
I apologize for not having that readily available.
I just thought you might have just a general idea or whatever.
The general idea is that it's supposed to be able to fit over both of the entry gates. So when we built it when we planned it originally, it was supposed to be able to fit over the whole entry there, including the gates, so that when you walked in, it wasn't. I don't know if it's going to be able to do that now. Judging by the angle that the gate is at, it's not square anymore. So I'm just not sure if it's going to have to move back several feet, so that's another reason that we need the Builders Association's help.
Okay, sounds like you're continuing with your design. I think you were talking about a covered entry, which would be a whole different.
No, that is the pavilion.
Oh, okay.
The pavilion is going to be the covered entry. It's not a gazebo or something out in the middle of the pavilion. I believe covers the whole thing.
Yeah, I was going to suggest the gazebo that's over by the field of flowers. It's not very utilized. I think that can be moved, so it wouldn't cost.
That would be great. Is one of the other 2 covered structures that we were looking at, but it wouldn't fit over the top of both of the entry gates.
Yeah, that's a covered entry in my vernacular, not a gazebo, but it's because you wouldn't stand under it. It'd be just for coming in and going.
It is both. So as you come in and you go through the gates, if you've been to the Soldotna Park or seen photos of it, as you come into their gates, the whole thing is covered and it's kind of a T shape. So when you come in and you go into the large park, the benches are there too. So you're sitting under the same entrance. so that you're utilizing the one covered area for both things, to cover your gates and to provide covered seating for your patrons.
Any further questions or comments for Councilmember Waring?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So this project has been a really long, ongoing project, and I know this has been really led by our volunteer group. Have you guys have been working with Parks and Rec from the get-go on this project, and administration, from my understanding, that there was a lot of assistance given by.
So you have a Parks and Rec director who's no longer here, and I think that he was giving, that was, the point of contact that we have. His name is even on our conceptual plan from the very beginning. Unfortunately, he's not here anymore, and I wasn't a part of the very beginning planning of that, so I can't tell you who else was involved, but I know that he was definitely involved and giving some direction there, and I think that he actually cleared. From what I understand, it was the Parks and Rec people that actually cleared most of the trees out of that lot, and then our group came through and just cleaned up the debris that was left behind. I'm not too sure about that. I believe Mr. Hammond might have some information. No? Okay.
Thank you.
I think it'd be good at this point to thank L&J that did the clearing with
Yes.
Mr. Hammond, and
Yes.
not the city, by the way. Thank you.
He did the clearing of the debris. I don't know if he cut down all of the trees. You cut them all down? Okay, all right.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. On your allocation for your pavilion, approximately $10,000, is that part of the $25,000 that was already granted from the city to that?
That $25,000 was granted for fencing, and that $25,000 was spent. So the fencing, we have already paid. We have already paid about $27,000 in fencing.
Okay, and there was no volunteer donations for the fencing? It all came from the grant from the city?
There wasn't. We were working with Home Depot, and they were supposed to volunteer some help to install, and then they were supposed to give us some really good pricing and donate, like, if we bought the fence, they'd donate the hardware. We were throwing around some other ideas like that. Unfortunately, it hit peak summer season last year, and then with COVID and the Home Depot store here locally could not facilitate even a meeting with us to talk about the fencing even further, even going up their ladder. We didn't hear anything back after our initial, like, oh yeah, well, we can do this, what do you think about that, and here's an estimate, and we're like, hey, that estimate doesn't look right. There was nothing after that. So even showing up at the store, we got, well, I can't right now. So we did try for other ways. We don't have any other donations for the fencing. I know that this company here was one of the only ones that would actually come out and work with us and give us an estimate, because everybody else was backlogged by the time we were trying to put in fence. We put in fence in the fall. Everybody else was wrapping up projects. So that doesn't mean that we would continue to. If we could find a donation, if we could find a better price on fencing, we are not against shopping around for better options.
And then also, in your presentation, there was a portion of your dog park that you're wanting to move fencing for and request land that has not been granted.
Right. So
And why is that?
So I think that, ultimately, there was some miscommunication about the original size of the park and what was there. When it got fenced in, it was evident that we weren't going to be able to provide the community with what we had originally, what the concept plan was. We offered, here, look at this great park we're going to build you. It wasn't there. We didn't meet, 2 or 3 of our goals. We are unable to meet with what's left. After the trees are cleared and the fence is put in. The fence is also, it doesn't take up much area as was there. But we're not quite at, the acre and a half that the Soldotna Park is at. It's still very small. We were trying to incorporate what's available without encroaching on any other space. So what we're asking, or we'll be asking in a future resolution for, is to utilize 40 feet, towards the path area that's currently not in use, be able to leave those trees there without cutting them down, be able to meet those goals that we were unable to meet when, everything got cleared out, extend differently. And that's just a whole bunch of miscommunication, a whole bunch of change of regime, and we're gonna hopefully have some better measurements on that so that we can actually present a formal request before spring. When spring comes, we're gonna want to be moving as fast as we can to meet some deadlines.
So I kind of want to follow up on that a little bit, because I think our original ordinance we allocated, it was for like a 22,500 square foot footprint, and now I think we were around 40,000. So it went a little bit higher than what was originally allocated through the ordinance. So I guess my question is, do you have an approximate amount with this little carve out that you're talking about to fence in
I don't
to the 40,000? Because an acre and a half is around 60 to 65,000 square feet. You're at 40, so you'd have to go half again to be something to accommodate
Can
that.
we move back, Madam Clerk? I don't know, like, number-wise, I don't know which slide. It's, map. It's the one with the full. There it is. So this area here is what you're asking for. Because of the odd shape of the snow that's out there right now, I don't have an actual square footage of that. I mean, we're gonna get you an estimate, but again, this is just a very rough draft of a conceptual plan. I also want to let the council know that there is a potential that this will not work. There is a choke point here between where we have our library box, our book box here, and where the easement is right here for the road, that is very narrow. If it looks like that's going to be too narrow, then we're not going to be able to move by that point. We can't create an environment where it's potential for one dog to corner or trap another in that back area there. So in that case, we cut that completely off right there. It would just come straight out from the edge. I mean, that would definitely reduce our fencing costs, but again, we just can't tell until we can get in there with, and see the actual ground. I mean, that's probably a more viable plan at this point. I was out there day before yesterday, and standing there's like 2 trees between me and the box, so I'm not sure that that's going to be wide enough.
Okay.
But as soon as we can, if we get some milder days, maybe we can go out and stake it and get you some better measurements, whether it's just not being cooperative.
Yeah, and actually Google Earth is a good tool. You can get some rough idea of square footage. Or I guess
I think your borough land management tool is better than Google.
Oh, it's okay.
It is.
And I was just looking to see if we're getting close to that sort of, that point that makes it work. I'm not
Yes.
a dog park designer,
Yes,
so I guess
think-
I'm going by what,
I
has
think
worked for other
we're getting
people.
there, and I think we all want to see this done sooner rather than later. It's been a long time coming, and I think that we're at that point where, we're just gonna hit the push and go. But there's a good, I believe it's 40 feet here and 80 feet here of, treed area that can be utilized to
Yeah.
make up for not being able to meet those goals.
Yeah, I had seen that out there when I had swung by, but I would like, I mean, we want to have an end, we want to have an
And that's why we're
end
doing
product.
the solution of the
Yeah, an end product that is functional, for sure. Councilmember Petty?
Yes, just one follow-up question. Had the beetle kill not occurred and you still had the wooded area, would the request for the additional land not been in the scope?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I think in the beginning, if we would have known better, trial and error, right? It was a little bit different than when Soldotna planned theirs. They took half of an entire park. We had a conceptual plan, and when you hand a conceptual plan to a volunteer committee, they go, oh, here's our plan. And so we just took it for granted that this is what we're gonna do. And comparing that now, it was never feasible. It was never feasible to get the area that they showed in that map into the space that was allotted to the council. So, I think it should have been just a little bit approached a little bit different, maybe. But I probably wouldn't. We probably wouldn't be asking for more because we could have planned the space out a little bit better. Now, if we think about trying to go back and redo that, we're talking about trying to replace giant trees that have been growing for years and years to make up for that, and that's just more of an expense than the fencing itself at this point.
Okay, any further questions? Thank you, Crystal. Appreciate your coming here this evening and giving us this additional information.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3265-2021?
Yes, I would, Al Hall.
Okay, go ahead, Al.
Sorry. Hi, council. Sorry, I'd like to have been there in person, but unfortunately, due to some health issues, I couldn't make it. I just want, I want to thank Crystal for all the hard work she's put into it and all of our volunteers. I've been part of the city in some way, shape, or form probably for the last 25 years. The dog park, or a dog park, has been in our vision for a long time. We had talked about putting one out there by the soccer field during the Dawson Spec Park fuation. We had the dog park was a phase 3 of 3 from that. The phase 1, phase 2, and in phase 3. So this is something that's true and blue to my heart, and I would greatly appreciate any support from the city administration, city council, on behalf of the dog park committee to help us in any way, shape, or form and make this, a top-notch dog park destination, for our visitors and such that come from the outside. There was a question asked about the beetle kill in the trees. If we thought that we would probably need more land if that wouldn't have occurred. I'm going to go out on a fence here and say we probably would have requested a little bit more land had we not jumped into this so hastily in trying to get something up and running, probably without doing the proper legwork. Nobody's fault. That just shows you the excitement of the group wanting to get something done, in a hurry. You're going back, looking at it, and myself, I think that we would have done some things different. I think we'd probably would have went out there and flagged it out and seen that it was a little too small, and probably would have requested either going south towards Marathon Road or that little section by the pond. So with that being said, I truly appreciate all the support or any support that you could give us on behalf of the committee and everybody that's working so hard, and I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hall? Seeing none, thanks, Al.
You bet.
Is there anybody else from the general public that would like to speak to resolution 3265-2021?
Hi, my name is Lena Wismar, and I am a resident of Kenai. As a member of the Dog Park Committee and also as a member of this community, I would like to urge the council to consider this ordinance to help pay for phase 2, which is something that the committee and volunteers cannot raise for as in a timely manner. So I would just like to encourage you to accept the ordinance. I also have raffle tickets for sale if anyone would like them tonight.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Wismar?
I'll take some raffle tickets.
Thank you. I think I've got some here. So,
Awesome. I'd also like to mention, as a member of this community, I myself drove down to the Soldotna Dog Park just this week. So it is something that I, as a member of the community, would like, and I know there's other members in this audience itself that would like it as well.
all right. Thank you. Is there anybody else from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3265-2021?
I'm a City of Kenai resident for 30 years. I asked for your support for the funding for the dog park. I was involved with the municipal park playground upgrade 7 years ago. To make a successful park for our community, you must have the support of you, the council, your Parks and Recs department, and members of the community, all working together. The dog park has been requested by the citizens from our community for years. Like Al had mentioned, it's been talked about through the city to try to get this park for years. The Kenai Dog Park Friends organization has spent countless hours and years trying to get this park completed, and they need your help to finish. I am asking you to support us and them in their efforts to complete this project and approve the requested funding. I do not want to see another project in the city of Kenai not completed. This park will allow our citizens to have a safe place for their dogs to run and allow our citizens a safe place for recreational activities. The amount of support that we saw during the 4th of July parade for the dog park from our community members was overwhelming. There is a need for this park in our community. Please support this project and approve the requested funds to get this park done.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Kramer? Thank you, Angie. Is there anybody else from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3265-2021? Sure, just briefly, okay? Just, you know.
One thing that I didn't realize is, I didn't realize when I came up with first, the scope of the size of the park, being the size that it is, the projected size that it is. Our park is 1.5 acres, and we use every inch of it. I wanted the whole thing, we got half, and you get too many people in a small area, because this is going to be big. There's going to be a lot of people that come to this, and there's going to be a lot of dogs. The smaller you get situations that can come up. Overcrowding, not enough parking. You get aggression. You can get a lot of things that can happen. So if there's an opportunity to do it right up front and get the size that they're asking for, because the trees are important. That extra area, 40 feet may not seem like a lot, but when you get all that going, you get some agility equipment, you get things in there, it's going to be very important. And it'll be for the long haul. Then you won't have to go back in and try to do something later. And I just wanted to mention that I didn't realize the size, but
Yeah.
if there's an opportunity to do it now, I'd do it now.
Thank you, Ms. Hawker. Yeah, that's what I was kind of been driving out here this evening, that we'd get something that
Any
works.
questions?
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to ordinance number 3265-2021? Is there anybody online?
Anyone on Zoom can raise your hand or unmute yourself. There are no hands raised.
Thank you very much. In that case, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Baisden.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start off. I co-sponsored this and support it. I've used the Soldotna Dog Park. I think it's great. I hate going that way with my dog because he thinks I should turn in and use it every time we go to Soldotna. I do agree that I think it'll be the most used park probably that this city has once it's built. This is a great opportunity to show that what the volunteers have done. You can tell they've done a great job to get it to this point, and the complexity of it now probably needs to be handed off to where we have the right people who can step in and make this successful. I appreciate all the work the volunteers have put in, and I hope we can support this.
Any further comments from council? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I too was a co-sponsor of this. I feel that this project has been a lingering project within our city for the last few years. We've seen the land donation, we've seen money allocated for fencing, but now really the scope of work has gotten into a level where we really have to come in to make sure we're staying federally compliant, state requirements, our codes are being met, as well as ADA compliance. We heard from Ms. Hawker that the ADA is a true big aspect to this. I know when the dog park was putting this together, some of their goals was to make sure that their park was ADA accessible because of the great amount of seniors and disabled people within our community, so that it was friendly for all user groups. I know one of their goals too, and why fencing is such a big deal, is the city of Kenai has a leash law, and that applies for the beach. So when people run their dogs on the beach without a leash, they're technically still not compliant with the ordinance. So if we were code enforcing, there'd be a lot of upset people on the beach getting no leash tickets. So by providing a adequate space for the dog park, kind of alleviated people being able to take their dog and give them that level of freedom, as well as dividing it into two separate areas for use, from small dogs to large dogs. And as we've heard, this will evolve over time. The Soldotna Dog Park is evolving theirs, adding in the memorial area. Their events sound like a great fun thing. Our Parks and Rec has really picked up a lot more events that they've been offering within our community, and this would be another aspect that our Parks and Recs department would really be able to run with. We have a high visitor rate with the location next to Walmart and the Dobbins Beck Pond. We see a lot of users get out and walk their dogs in that area already. We have a lot of truckers, a lot of tourism, that this would be utilized, as well as people within our community. I think we have a lot of apartment complexes and even a lot of rentals that aren't offering adequate yard space, and this really would troubleshoot that for many users. This is really at a point where I think they're going to continue to do their efforts and help in any way possible to make this successful with partnership with the city. And I would hope that the fellow members of the body would be as eager to getting this project completed as the committee is. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I too am a sponsor of this ordinance, and what I see, it's a golden opportunity for the city and the citizens of our city and the general area, the surrounding area that will certainly benefit from this excellent park that will be created for the benefit of the area. It shall be emblematic of a successful public-private cooperation. In many of our initiatives, many of our proposals, many of projects yet to come, we talk about public-private cooperation, and for sure we can all work together and have a successful, wonderful dog park. I'm excited about this. Excuse me. And our presentation tonight was very thorough, very thoughtful, and filled in a lot of voids of knowledge that perhaps needed reinforcing in my mind. I just have a number here from the city of Soldotna. The city of Soldotna appropriated $99,000, almost $100,000 for their Three Friends Dog Park. $55,000 was bequeathed from an estate. $7,500 was from various small donations, and $37,000 was from the city general fund. And I think our contributions for this park and the opportunities that will bring for not only the citizens of our town, but for the general area who rely on our town for shopping, for commerce, for our libraries, for our other parks, for our airport, for our beaches, for our harbor. I think this will be just another jewel in the crown of excellence that Kenai exemplifies. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Basin.
I need to disclose that I also made a donation to the dog park, so I just want to make sure that I don't have a conflict when the vote comes up.
I'll rule that you do not have a conflict.
Thank you.
I had a donation also.
Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I also would like to disclose that I have worked countless hours volunteering in in-kind donations from land clearing events with yourself as included in those.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess if it just goes, I don't see any reason that would, I mean, there's no financial benefit here. Those are just all voluntary hours for a community project. There's certainly no conflict that I can see for you that would disqualify you from voting on this ordinance. Any further discussion? Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you. I probably have countable hours that I've put into it personally, but, you know, it's not even a disclosure. But I want to thank Mr. Hammond, who's in the audience here, didn't speak tonight. I know that 2 years ago, he and L&J cleared that property, and with the plan that you had at the time, and not with a whole lot of volunteers, as I recall. You know, it was, and you tried a couple of times, and you did a great job. Thank you very much for doing all of that. 2 years ago, the project pretty well kind of had fallen off, and then Pat Porter decided to, you know, pick it up from there, and she's always been a cheerleader and all of that, and that's what she's done so far, is been a cheerleader, a great fundraiser, and she's in Tyler, Texas, you know, however far that way is, and I appreciate the rest of the volunteers that have put time and effort into the project, and really, I support the project. That's not an issue, and I support funding a project. And that is the normal process for a project, is you create it, and you scope it, you design it, you get an estimate, and then you fund it. And the funding kind of comes toward the end, not at the beginning. And kind of to cite the last whereas in this ordinance, it says, whereas it's in the best interest of the city to support the completion of the dog park by finishing the scope, design work, and the bid process, which is kind of how that works. So the money part kind of falls at the end. So in government or in the city here, you know, we really ought to support the dog park and create it as a capital project, and get it on our capital project list, and this is not that difficult to do. And then we have a public works director that would basically come up with an estimate on what the cost of the phase 2, 3, whatever is, and then the city ought to fund that. And I absolutely support that. However, I don't know if somebody called me from the public and said, Henry, what's the $63,000 going to pay for exactly? I don't know. We don't really have a design scope and all of that, and there's a couple of things in here, ADA. You know, I do ADA stuff but I really wouldn't have an answer for it. But if we had a project scoped out, I would. And, you know, and I look at $63,000, and that's just not enough, or it's too much. I don't know what to say. So I don't feel that as a fiscally conservative person that I can support the funding at this point without the project having gone through the scoping and the design work and all of that, because we're talking about public money that's going to go into something, and we don't want to have a plan that's really not been meshed and thought through, kind of like what we heard today. And I'm not saying that it wasn't good work done, but we've got a fence that's too small in a site that was prepared 2 years ago, or it's the right size, I'm not sure. And some various other little things that will need to be corrected and whatnot. So I think we need to make it a project and move forward and then fund it. So it's not that I don't support the funding it or creating the dog park. I think they're both great. It's just the process. And I think as a city, that's how we should be doing this project. But I'm not sure if anybody that's sponsoring this can tell me exactly how the $63,000 is going to be spent and on what and how much each of those items are, that it is sufficient.
Councilmember Winger.
Yes, some of the items that will be spent on this is the pavilion isn't just going to sit on the ground. That's going to have to be put on a concrete pad. Depending on the size of the concrete pad, the average rate per square is $2 to $3 per square. So if you're doing a 12 by 12, I mean, you're looking at quite a bit just in the finishing work. Plus you have the rebar that's going to go under there for stability, the concrete. All those items have gone up in cost. You have the pathways that are going to require some sort of gravel. Gravel as well is not a cheap option. They have looked at different options from gravel to a material called RAP, which is a, I call it regurgitated asphalt. And it's a cheaper option for some cases doing the RAP material. Which still has a substantial cost to it. So then you add in factors of water, a hand pump or a different means of watering system is going to be an expense. Lighting would have an expense, but I think the biggest concern right now is making sure that the ADA walkways are done correctly. There's going to be a great expense to that. The concrete pads are going to have a great expense, and this is a start at chipping away at the expenses that we will see with this project.
Any further? Councilmember Baisden.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I don't disagree with Councilmember Nackstead that this might not be the way things are always done. This body gets to set priorities for the administration, and we get to fund those priorities. We can change midstream anytime during the year if we have a project that we feel needs to be moved up, needs to be created. So what we're doing is we're creating a project for the city manager to give to capital projects that we want to see this put as a priority and completed. Vote yes or no if you don't agree. That's what we're going to do as a body.
Further comments? Vice Mayor Glendening?
Yeah, just a suggestion. We have a memorandum of understanding here, and it was mentioned that Phase 2 might involve the funding that's to be provided tonight, and involves lights, cameras, the water, as we discussed, the surfacing, and I think the $63,000 for the knowledge that we have is a good rough cut estimate of cost, and we have a city manager that's a projects man. We have a public works director that's a projects man. We have a new Parks and Rec director coming on that has projects background. So I think we will be well served to allocate this money, and I believe the money will be well spent for this project. It's just a matter of management from this point forward. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Petty?
Through the mayor, I would like to ask the city manager, in his scope of expertise and his understanding, does the $63,000 that's been suggested, if the city took this over, would it involve Davis-Bacon wages, and is that amount adequate to fund Phase 2?
Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Petty. If this city project, Davis-Bacon wages do apply. So that's the answer to your first question. As far as the cost, I couldn't give you an estimate on the cost because the scope hasn't been well established. You know, I talked to Ms. Locke several times over the last week or so, and I think we both agree that scope needs to be better defined. I know there's been discussions about a concrete pad in there. In discussions with the dog park committee, they seem convinced now that a concrete pad is not something that would be necessary. The type of water source that's in there is, depending on which way you go, I think there's significant cost differences between the two. The type of material, as Councilmember Winger was talking about, if you use RAP or if you use rock or some other type of material, those cost differences are substantial. Lighting, you're subject to the cost of installation of that electrical, which you're relying on HEA to provide that, and those costs can be significant, but again, there's a huge variation in those costs depending on how you approach that. The number of lights, the number of cameras, without that information, I couldn't tell you if this is sufficient money or not.
Further discussion? Councilmember Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the city manager, what is the, for Davis-Bacon wages, $50,000 for a project? Is that what it is for the state now? If you can remind me.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Baisden. It's either $25,000 or $50,000. Mr. Bloom might know the answer to that.
Mr. Bloom.
Thank you. I believe the Little Davis-Bacon is 25.
I thought it was increased at the state. Is the city different than the state level? I thought it was increased at the state level.
It was from $2,000 to $25,000. It was Gary Knopp's legislation.
Okay, yeah, I remember it being increased. Okay, thank you. So I guess my other question then to the city manager is that, again, the reason some of the language that was put in here was because you can tell that the complexity of this, from all this work these volunteers have done, it needs to be handed over now to us as professionals, and I would expect that you and your team can complete this. So you have to have funding to be able to complete it. You have to have funding if you need to go out and scope it. So you tell them you can't complete this properly, you can't go and work through the check boxes that you would typically do. We're going to give you funding, and if it's not enough, you're going to come back and ask us for more funding. You do that all the time in your budget.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Baisden. So the way that we typically handle a capital project here at the city is that we will establish the scope of the project. In the case of this, if we were to construct phase 2 of this dog park, we would work with the committee and determine exactly what those needs were. So they would be able to help us identify the number of lights that were necessary and the number of security cameras. We would discuss the different types of materials you might have on the trail, and we'd also discuss whether or not a concrete pad was necessary or if some other type of surface was necessary. We would meet with them and establish what those needs were. Once those needs are established, then we have a scope that we can actually internally provide a cost estimate. So at that point, we haven't incurred any costs as a city, but we've done the necessary steps to establish a scope and then provide an internal estimate. At that point, that capital project is then considered with all the other capital projects within the city. Council determines if it is a project that they want to pursue, and then at that point, the money is appropriated. Then we would go out to a formal design and construction. If we go through this process and appropriate before we do all that work, it's not that we can't get it done. All I'm making sure that council understands is without us doing that initial work, I can't tell you if $63,000 is the right amount. But we can get the project done. And I will tell you, to answer your last one, when we go through that process and establish the scope and provide an internal estimate and council appropriates the money, as we go through the design process and the bid, there are times when additional money is needed. That's for sure. But we typically go into this with at least a better ballpark estimate than what we currently have with the dog park.
Just to follow up, Mayor, if I may? Yeah, so again, I guess in the language in here is why we've got scope in here, because I understand that is going to be the first thing you do. If you're going to go out and scope it, you have to have money to scope it. So you're going to have $63,000 to now go out and scope this project, and then if more is needed, you're going to bring it back to this body, and we would put it then into the budget to make that happen. Again, what this is showing, we're trying to show the volunteers and the citizens of this city that we take seriously what it is that they've done. They've come to us. They want to see this thing done sooner than later. We don't want to push this off any later. We want to try to make it successful. So again, my question to you is that even though we have done this maybe that's not normal, can you not complete this and be successful? That's my question.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Basin, I just answered that question.
Yeah, I think we're kind of all on the same page here. We're just saying it in a different way. Councilmember Petty.
Yes, either through the city manager or perhaps the city attorney, if the city did take over this scope of work, would that negate this project from being eligible for a Rasmussen grant? I know that the volunteers had considered going for a grant through the Rasmussen, and there are grants available through the Rasmussen Foundation that have no timeline on it and can be implemented with the initiation of a volunteer doing that. So if this was handed over to the city, are y'all aware if that would negate the opportunity for us to participate in that grant opportunity?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Petty, I couldn't say with certainty. As a nonprofit organization, I think you're eligible for Rasmussen grants, so I think there's always going to be participation on the part of the Dog Park Committee throughout the life of this park. At least I certainly hope there will be. As a nonprofit, I would think they would still be eligible for Rasmussen grants, but I couldn't say for certain.
Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I also have a question for City Manager Ostrander. This project has been going for well over 3 years with a land donation and allocation of money. Is there a reason why the city hasn't done a formal scope on this project and why this wasn't done in the beginning before we allocated land or money? It seems like we're now saying that we missed a step in the beginning 3 years ago. So I guess I'm just confused on why we're saying 3 years later there was a step missed in the beginning, and why was that step missed when when I volunteered, this was strictly done with the support and assistance from Parks and Rec, who said that they had worked with administration. So is there a reason why no scope or no anything was done to this point after land donations and money was allocated?
Yeah, just for your information, in our laydown tonight, there was a memorandum that was included that captures, I think, part of that question or the answer to that question. But Mr. Ostrander, if you'd like to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Winger, I was going to point to the memo, but I'd also state that the $63,000 that we're talking about tonight is for phase 2 of the project. So it's not a portion of the project that was, at least in my knowledge, contemplated when the park was originally, since the city was originally approached by the committee. Phase 1, which is what Ms. Locke talked about tonight, was the part that they originally had anticipated constructing. And to be clear, I think that they're going to be successful in completing phase 1 as a volunteer group with the funds that they have available. The $63,000 is not going to be needed for completion of phase 1. So we're talking about phase 2, really a separate project from the first phase. I will say that the involvement from the city from the beginning likely should have been better than it has been. And I have more recently reestablished communications with the dog park group, and I am going to be the singular point of contact going forward to assure that this is successful. I'm hoping that Ms. Locke is going to be the singular point of contact for the dog park group. So I'm committing to council right now that we're going to make sure that phase 1 is completed successfully. We're going to be providing significant support from my office, from Public Works, and from Parks and Rec to make sure that that happens. But as far as the $63,000, that's a separate project, and that's why the scope hasn't been established for that.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes. Also, I did have the privilege to serve on the council in 2018 when the volunteers came before the city council with their formal request for land appropriation from the city. And they stated that there would be no expense to the city other than the volunteer appropriation of the property. And so when I was in favor of the dog park, I'm still in favor of the dog park, but I did take them at their word when they said that there would be no expense to the city. And then they came back in 21 and asked for another appropriation for $25,000, which the council did generously appropriate for that. And so and from what I've learned tonight, it's anticipated that they're phase one, and that was their goal. Other than the fact that beetle kill came along and killed their trees, and I'm wondering now with the appropriation that I'm anticipating that they're going to come forward with requesting more land, if the property that they're requesting, the viability and health of the trees that are on there currently, if that's going to meet the needs as well, if we're going to be down the road with dead trees. And that's just a point that I'm considering as well. And so I think that the City Council has been most generous with this opportunity for the Kenai Dog Park. And I commend all of the volunteers for all the time and donations that they have put forth for the dog park. And I feel like that phase two is a totally different scope of work that I agree with Councilmember Nackstead in moving forward with a scope of work so that we have complete understanding of what that cost involvement is, so that we hold the fiduciary responsibility of the taxpayers' money in allocating resources. And I do understand Mr. Baisden's thought process about, well, we can do it differently, but we have a method so as to make sure that we operate within our budget and that the priorities are met to ensure that the most important is taken care of, not the most expedient. So, thank you.
Vice Mayor Glendinning.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yeah, I think the point of the exercise is to recognize that phase one is largely successful, and there were a few missteps along the way, and perhaps the dog park committee has reconstituted itself, and but now we have very good communication with our city manager and with the dog park people. We have an idea of what is to be contained in the phase two. It's not out of the ordinary to set aside money in a piggy bank, a line item, to allow for funding of a proposed project. I've been in projects in oil field, and we have set aside money based on a proposed scope of work, an idea of what something would cost. Mr. Baisden is right. We start with projects. We think we have a good idea, and things change. Well, things have changed, but $63,000 is a very healthy sum of money to ensure the success of this project. And I, for one, am going to continue to support appropriation of these funds, and I think because of our dedication of these funds, I think we'll have a very successful project. I can't forecast what the beetles will do to the trees, but with perhaps a little firewise trimming, we could maybe take care of some of the dead trees, and the younger ones will grow and prosper. That's easy to do. It's management. We can do all of these things. Let's focus on getting this project done. Let's get off to a good start with the $63,000. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I just would like to discuss that $63,000, where it comes from. That money was just at our previous meeting allocated to our general fund from remaining COVID funds. So there was a little over $63,000. It was an odd number. Administration asked us to round it. So $63,000 is what we ultimately took from COVID money over to our general fund that is sitting there unallocated. So this is ultimately not coming out of property tax money. This is COVID money that was put over into our general fund at our previous meeting, which would be federal tax money that isn't coming from your property taxes or your sales tax revenues. There was over $80,000 in leftover COVID money. Some of that was spent on touchless water bottles for city buildings. The $63,000 that got put over into the general fund would go out for a greater purpose of serving the community. And that is ultimately where the money is coming from, and it would be used to greater serve the community as a whole.
Further discussion? Councilmember Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess just one more comment. Here we have nothing but support for this project, both from this body, both from testimony. Nobody, there must not be any cat people here because they all love dogs, and that's why I think this is going to be the most successful park that we have here. You know, I'm being a little lighthearted here. Even this body here realizes that this project is going to get done. It's going to get done. So if this money is appropriate at this time, our city manager is going to do the appropriate things that needs to be done. And we will just check the box to show this group that has put in, who has spoken to me and probably others, that they think that a wall has been put up for some reason to complete this thing. And let's show them that we can get this thing done, because it's going to get done one way or another. This is it might be a little different than the way we have done things in the past. It's still not inappropriate. It's still an appropriate way to do it. That is what this body does. We come up and we can make changes to things as we see fit. And I think this is appropriate, and I think you will make a lot of people happy in this community by passing this.
Further discussion? Councilmember Naxton.
I just got to say, it remains the $63,000 question. I still don't know, and I have not heard what each of these items might cost. We don't even know if they're all necessary, and I'm hearing that maybe one isn't. At our last meeting, we did allocate the $63,000 into a particular place. So this really is taxpayers' money. It's coming out of the general fund. But that being said, I still support the dog park and I support funding it. But there is a process and a procedure for doing that. And though we can do it, we can do all kinds of things. It's not the most appropriate way to allocate funds for a project that hasn't been scoped.
Further discussion? I guess I'll weigh in here. So as you may recall several meetings ago, I'd asked that the dog park be put on as an information or discussion item for the purpose of moving that forward. We had, the volunteers that have spent countless hours over there, the support, the donations and things like that to make this a viable park. And part of that was spawned by a conversation I had previous to that with the city manager regarding where this is going, and our former mayor, Pat Porter, who I think is online. I think that's Patricia's iPad there. But part of that discussion was to bring this, for several reasons, was to move the project forward, but at the end of the day, to end up with a viable park, because we're not going to look very good if we spend money and we don't have any, very good end product. I mean, right now we don't know the size. And here's the thing: I think we're all supportive of this getting done. I mean, I think from what I understand, listening to comments after the park folks were here last time, was that this needs to go forward. It needs to be done. It needs to be done right. We're seeing where we probably maybe need more space. We started out at 22,500 square feet. It's kind of morphed into 40,000 square feet, which is just under an acre. An acre and a half is about 65,000 square feet, somewhere in there, so we're still about 20-some thousand square feet. I don't know if that additional amount of land there is going to sort of make this viable or make it work. My preference would have been to have Paul and work with the dog park people to continue their efforts. The other thing, and I spoke to this last time too, is if we're going to do water that we have to trench in, we have to do lighting, we need to trench in, some grading for ADA. A lot of that may be needed to be in conjunction with phase 2. I mean, I don't know if that is very economical to do phase two, which completes the fencing, when you might have to remove the fencing and do some of this other stuff. So you're kind of going backwards. What's that, Vice Mayor Glendenning? No, I don't think that's what I heard. I've been very respectful, and I always have when you speak. I think everybody is, that's a level of decorum here. If you have a question after I'm done, I would certainly entertain it. I've heard several things, okay? So, I mean, I'm not done deliberating, and I have the floor right now.
Okay. Well, you called a council member out, so I guess a point of order would be, I'm sitting by only a mumble.
Yes. So, as I was going with this, my thought process would have been at the end of the day to have the folks from the dog park move forward and get this scoped out, get an end product, and get this thing done by this summer. Move it forward. Where I was going with where I thought with the allocation, which I heard you do the vote count. I did hear that with my own ears on the 4-3. I will support this because I think it's going to move forward. But I want to be on the record to say that I don't support the process that's being done here. I don't think it's how things should be done when you're doing capital projects. It's not how you would do things if you built a house, if you did stuff yourself, if you were doing a yard improvement. Those aren't the way you do it. Well, at least I don't, and I think most people don't, is they go and scope the work and they figure out how much it's going to cost, maybe change the types of materials they're going to use to make it work their budget. So I just wanted to go on the record to say that I would have preferred to have this continue working organically to come up with a scope and a funding level that we can all look at one time. I don't, this looks like it kind of goes into an escrow account, I guess, at that point. So I'm not so much concerned about it because I don't think it's going to be something that's going to be expended and then we're going to come back and say, okay, we're going to need another $100,000. But just wanted to go on the record to make that point. Is there any other comments? And again, going back to the point of what makes this a viable, workable park is going to be the size of it and the square footage that we need to make that work. So, any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Winger,
Yes.
Naxted,
No?
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty,
No.
Councilmember Baisden,
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart.
Yes.
You have 5 yes and 2 no. Ordinance 3265-2021 passes.
Council, we now have resolution number 2022-01, approving the purchase of 15 mobile radios and associated programming for the police and fire departments under sole source purchases from Motorola Solutions under NASPO value point contract pricing for the total price of $83,979.77. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 2022-01.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to resolution number 2022-01? Is there anybody online, Madam Clerk?
For those attending through Zoom, unmute yourself or raise your hand. There are no hands raised.
Thank you. With that, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council?
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2022-01 is adopted.
Mayor Gabriel, can we have a 10-minute at ease, please?
Yes, let's take 10 minutes at ease. I'd like to come back on record here. Next up, we have resolution number 2022-02, adopting alternative allocation method for the FY22 Shared Fisheries Business Tax Program and certifying that this allocation method fairly represents the distribution of significant effects of fisheries business activity in FMA 14 Cook Inlet area. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Nexted.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 2022-02.
I second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2022-02? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council.
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection?
Yeah.
Vice Mayor
No,
Glendenning?
no objection. I would just, maybe for the folks at home, if Mr. Eubanks could just give the 30,000-foot view through the mayor.
Mr. Oshner?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel and Vice Mayor Glendenning. Yes, Terry has explained this to me every year as well, so I think it's a good idea for him to provide an overview.
I think he's explained it to me every year also.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Vice Mayor Glendenning. So under the State of Alaska Shared Fisheries Business Tax Program, there are two allocation methods that are prescribed for in statute. In whatever zone, Unit 14, we were in every year since 1992. All of the communities within 14 have elected the alternative allocation method, which is what's being recommended again here. The difference is the funds are allocated in both methods. 50% of the total allocation is allocated to each they take 50% of the amount to be allocated and divide it equally amongst the communities. Okay, that's the second 50% that has a distinction on how it's allocated. There's two methods. One, which is the method we're recommending, the alternate allocation method, is done based upon population. So communities with higher population get a higher percentage of that remaining half. This year, the two halves are $10,755. Okay, so not a lot of money when you're talking about 10 different communities. The other method, which has never been employed in 14, is where each community would have to complete an application and basically demonstrate the financial impacts of the fishery on their community. And then in some way, the state then takes all of those applications and creates an allocation based upon the financial impacts. In my opinion, this is one of those cost-benefit things. It would be a tremendous amount of work, not only for this city, but all 10 communities involved, and we'd be arguing over less than $11,000. So under this method, which is the same method, like I said, this resolution has been before this body, different people, since 1992 when the program started, and each year we've always selected the alternative allocation method.
Thank you, Mr. Eubank. Did that answer your question? Or no? Any further discussion on resolution number 2022-02? Was unanimous consent? Yeah, unanimous consent was requested. So is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2022-02 is adopted. Next up, we have resolution number 2022-03, amending the employee classification plan to change the range of the Human Resources Director. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Basin.
I make a motion that we make the changes to resolution.
Adopt resolution 2203.
2203, yes.
Very good. Is there a second?
I second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2022-03? Is there anybody online?
For those attending through Zoom, you can raise your hand or unmute. There are no hands raised.
Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Mr. Ostrander, you want to give us a little overview on this?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. As you might recall, the Human Resources Director was a newly created position 3 years ago. And when we created this position, it was originally classified at the range 26. We've now have 3 years of experience with this position. The former Human Resources Director retired December 27th of last year. In looking at this job description and the duties associated with the position, we think that a range 23 more accurately reflects the duties and responsibilities of the position. And we're confident that at the range 23, we'll be able to hire a qualified candidate for the position.
Thank you, Mr. Ostrander. Councilmember Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. For the city manager, can you give us what that minimum and maximum range is, just for the record, so if you've got that available?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Baisden. For range 23, the minimum is $79,084, and the maximum is $104,382. For 26, it's $91,591 minimum, and the maximum is $120,903.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on resolution number 2022-03?
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2022-03 is adopted. That brings us to item F, unfinished action. Action approval, confirmation of mayoral nominations for appointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And there's a clerk's note at the December 15th, 2021 meeting. This item was postponed to this meeting. And it doesn't say there was a motion on the floor, it just says it was postponed. Vice Mayor Glendinning.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Put a motion on the floor for confirmation of the mayor's nominations of Jeff Twait and Glenn Woodward. I would request that we divide the question. Other than that, I make my statement according to the memo on page 41. Thank you.
Very good. Is there a second to move the?
I'll second.
Okay, very good. With that in mind, we'll divide the question. Let me see if I can. So the nominees we are considering is Ms. Woodard, Glenn Woodard, and Mr. Jeff Twait. We'll take Ms. Woodard first. Deliberation on Ms. Woodard for confirmation to Planning and Zoning. Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I would be in support of renominating Gwen Woodard with the commitment that there would be training, as she has been served about a year. I don't believe any real training has happened for her. I know she has asked for it. So at this point in time, if we were able to give some additional training, I would be in support of nomination.
I don't think we're actually, there wouldn't be a caveat to the training. It's just a straight up or down. Councilmember Winger.
Okay, I understand that. I guess for me, I'm just, can we, a question for City Manager Ostrander, would we be able to give proper training to our commissioners?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Winger. The training of commissioners is handled by the clerk's office and the attorney's office, so I would defer to them.
Mr. Bloom.
I believe the clerk and I are planning on providing training on Robert's rules and adjudicative sessions to the Planning Commission as soon as we have time and she gets their feet dry, and should happen soon.
Like for soon, for time frame, are we saying a couple months, 6 months, a year? Just roughly time frame. I know it's hard to kind of pinpoint, but I just want to make sure it's going to happen not a year out from now.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I imagine that Attorney Bloom and I should be able to accomplish it by the end of February.
Thank you.
And I presume that would be all open to all planning and zoning members that would like to attend.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the nomination, on the confirmation of Ms. Woodard to the Planning and Zoning Commission? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Sonart,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Winger,
Yes.
and Vice Mayor Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. That is approved.
Thank you. Next, we are considering the confirmation of Mr. Jeff Twait to Planning and Zoning. So open the floor, comments. Councilmember Petty?
Yes. I would like to thank Mr. Twait, who is here in the audience tonight, for his continued service and his expertise on planning and zoning, and that I graciously appreciate his service and look forward to voting yes.
Can I have a motion to move to confirm? Councilmember
I'll move to confirm Mr. Twait.
Second. Very good. Now discussion on that. Councilmember Naxton.
Yeah, I also like to thank Mr. Twait for all of his years of dedication. And I worked, well, I was on planning and zoning for about 4 years, and I was your vice chair for but most of that. And you've done a great job. And then since I've been on council for the last 7 years, and of course I knew you professionally before all of that. And you always do great work, and you run a very good meeting, tight meeting. You're consistent, and you've gone to a lot of the training that's made available. Some of it's in Anchorage and Fairbanks and all of that, and you're very valuable to us. And I'll absolutely support you for another term. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Winger,
No.
Vice Mayor Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes and 1 no vote. That
Thank-
appointment is approved.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next up, thank you, Council. Next up, under G6, we have action approval, Kenai Bluff Stabilization Project thank you letter. Councilmember Naxted, or Councilmember Patty, I'm sorry.
Yes, this was requested by me to have a thank you letter available for all of the city council members to sign, personally thanking the governor for the allocation of, I think it was $6 million for our bluff erosion opportunity, and I wanted him to personally get a letter of thanks, letting him know how appreciative that we are. And I appreciate everyone's signature on that letter. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve?
I'd
Councilmember
like to
Petty?
approve this motion moving
Yeah.
forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. Request unanimous consent.
Okay, very good. Very good. So unanimous consent was requested on the approval and the action approval and of the approval of this letter, and then everybody signing and then forwarding to the governor. If I wouldn't mind, actually, if it would be okay, or if there's no objection from council, to have this also sent to our local delegation too. Or a copy of it, rather. Thank you. So unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that action approval is approved. We'll move to commission committee reports. Council on Aging.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just checking my calendar. No report. Council on Aging meets on the 13th at the Senior Center at 3 o'clock.
Thank you. Airport Commission?
Thank you, Mayor. No meeting since our last meeting. The next meeting for the Airport Commission is on the 13th at 6 o'clock in the chambers.
Thank you. Harbor Commission?
Thank you, Mayor. There's no report, but we do have a special meeting that's noted for January the 11th at 6 p.m. here in the chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Commission?
No report. The meeting was canceled.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning Commission?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. On the 22nd of December, the Planning Commission met in chambers here. There was a resolution passed for a conditional use permit for a limited marijuana cultivation facility on the property located at 5345 Kenai Spur Highway. This application was submitted by Bryce Hoaxegg, Hockey Teeth, I'm sorry, Kenai Spur Highway, Unit B. The motion was proposed and passed unanimously. There was just clarification, mostly a boilerplate, that once the business is in operation, it would not prevent other businesses from operating within a 1,000-foot radius. In other words, if something comes in within the radius prescribed through code, it would not preclude operation of that business. And then Mr. Welch clarified that the state requirements for security, noting that he would receive notifications when regulation changed, and there was a 500 square foot area is canopy for the plants. There was questions about security, and the answers were provided and well received by the commission. There was a resolution for application for a conditional use permit for a standard marijuana cultivation facility. That too was approved, and of course the information provided in the packet provided for the standard that the property shall conform to all federal, state, and local regulations. A landscape plan must be approved, and prior to any building or construction of new structure, a building permit must be issued by a building official of the city of Kenai, and the standards for commercial marijuana establishment must be maintained. Those are the major notes on this action that the Planning and Zoning Commission took. There was a resolution of unfinished business recommending that the council approve and adopt the City of Kenai Land Management Plan. I believe that was postponed until a work session, which will be held on the 20th of January. That would be allowed to the Planning and Zoning Commission to have, well, not necessarily the last bite of the apple, but a definitive bite of the apple, as other commissions and committees will have at least completed the first pass and significant portion of their tasks before that meeting. And this ends my comments, and the next meeting is 12th of January, a week from today. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautification Committee?
Beautification Committee meets tomorrow night, and I believe it's in conjunction with Parks and Rec to go over the land management plan.
Right, special.
Very good, thank you. Mini Grant Steering Committee, there is no report. Under report of the mayor, I hope everybody had a nice holiday break there and look forward to a new year. I was able to go down and spend some time with my daughter in Minneapolis, and my son flew over from Boston with his family, which was nice to be able to spend that time with to see them. But in the meantime, we do have, I just wanted to fill you in on our student representative, Leah Faulkner. She's resigned, and I spoke with our new clerk, Ms. Sainer, and they're having a meeting this week so to hopefully have a reappointment of a student representative as replacement shortly. So I did attend a Peninsula Mayor's meeting this afternoon. It was set up by Tim Dillon over at CAPED. It was the first. It was similar to what they've done for the city managers in the past, where they've all the city managers of the borough have met and discussed ongoing issues that might be interrelated to each other. It was our first meeting that we've had. It was actually quite interesting. We'll be looking at having another meeting probably here as the budgeting comes out for the borough to sort of look at impacts that those budgets might have on our communities, to get that out to, what their concerns are, things that we can bring back. They were kind of talking about having some sort of affirmative statements regarding, tax money. I would prefer to wait till the borough produces their budget to make sure that we see what their budget is. I mean, before we talk about anything, changing, or recommended changes to tax structures and things like that. But as an example of another discussion item at our next meeting would be like the spruce bark beetle mitigation and how we can look at, helping the borough receive funds, get funds, and then taking action to move forward. And even maybe delving on and tasking our administrations to look at, if there's things that need to be done on private property, that's an issue with, mitigation and hazard mitigation plans, is that you're dealing with private property and property rights. And so there's got to be buy-in from those folks to make that work. So stay tuned on that. And then tomorrow morning, over at the Kenai Visitor Center is the Industry Outlook Forum hosted by CAPED. So that starts about, I think, around 9 o'clock. I'll be there to give a welcoming statement for the city of Kenai. They've brought it back to the city, which is kind of nice. And, after especially, last year dealing with COVID and things like that. So I got an agenda hot off the press today. It looks like a pretty interesting lineup. So if you don't have anything going on tomorrow, it might be interesting to stop by and see what's happening around the peninsula as far as economics forum go. Yeah, if you're walking, I don't know. I have to talk to Tim about that. I was wondering if it was just people strolled in. So
You have to register online or in person.
Okay.
Mayor, it starts at 8:15, but does the presentation start at 9?
So the agenda here, I've got, it actually starts at 8:15, registration and continental breakfast. And then I'm giving opening statements around 8:55 a.m. And then it goes to about 3:40 or so. And with that, we'll move to our administration report. City Manager, Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So we've been actually, Soldotna and Kenai both, we've been working with the borough on getting updated aerial photography, which is exciting for us. Last time we had updated aerial photography was 2012. They actually flew the area in 2021. I'm sure Councilmember Baisden is intimately familiar with this project. He was at the borough when they entered this contract. This will help significantly, much higher quality, and obviously all the improvements that have occurred in the last 9 years will show up. So you'll see this at the borough's online GIS, and we'll incorporate it into the city's GIS online as well. So excited to get that. Working through a memorandum of agreement with the borough right now to get our hands on that. On the 22nd of December, I met with Angela Ramponi and Jane Conway. Some of you may know Angela. She grew up here locally, but she works for Senator Murkowski's office in D.C. now. We had a really good discussion about the Bluff project and the possible future funding opportunities for the city under the infrastructure bill as well. So, you know, Murkowski was instrumental in getting the infrastructure bill passed, and now it's about getting those monies out. So they're taking a role in how those monies are going to be spent. So we'll continue discussions with them, as well as Senator Sullivan and Congressman Young's office to make sure that we have everything that they need to make sure that we're eligible for that funding. I wanted to give folks an update on the bowling alley auction. If you didn't hear, that was auctioned off in December, I think December 21st. There were no bids on the bowling alley, so it was unsuccessful. I'm not sure what the next steps are at this point, but there were not any successful bids on the 21st. Also wanted to make sure that council saw the memo from me that contains the additional information that the Planning and Zoning Commission requested at their meeting of December 22nd about the land management plan. They had asked for clarification on the intent of the plan, how the best way it was for them to get amendments to the plan, and then also to provide a sample motion, and this memo outlines all of those things. This will be provided to every commission as they consider the land management plan. And last, bluff stabilization. Our 35% complete design documents were provided to the city on Sunday, the 2nd. So we do have those in hand. I didn't get them myself until 4 o'clock this afternoon, so I haven't had a time to go over them thoroughly, but I will provide council a detailed report on those design documents at our next meeting. And that's all I have tonight, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions of the city manager? Seeing none, we'll move to city attorney, Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, members of council. Just to provide an update, I have been in contact with the attorneys for UCEDA regarding the lawsuit for the EEZ, as well as attorneys for NOAA and the Department of Justice, which is handling the defense case for the federal government, as well as attorneys for Homer and Seward. Homer does not want to join in an amicus brief with us, and Seward and Homer, I believe, Seward and Soldotna, who have the same outside counsel, are considering either this week or next week having their outside counsel draft one brief for them. So I'm not sure if we fit into that either. So most likely we would file our own amicus brief. And I've sort of been in negotiations with the Department of Justice to get their consent, which I think is important as far as the judge accepting it. And I will have probably an action item at the next meeting for you to approve whether or not you want us to go ahead and file our own amicus brief. Other than that, I don't have anything, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of the city attorney? Seeing none, we'll move to city clerk, our new first meeting. Oh, and just, I was also notified that the scene, I didn't realize this, that must have showed up after I got it, but there are cookies out there. I didn't go, sadly, it's late, I'm sorry about that. But Ms. Sainer.
Thank you. Through the mayor, being my third day, I'm just getting my feet under me. There's not a lot to report at this time.
Any questions of the Councilmember Weir?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I just want to say welcome and thank you for the cookies. I'm assuming that you had made the cookies? No.
The senior center, sorry.
Senior
I should have
Center,
included,
okay.
The
Well,
seniors at the
I
center.
went to
I'm
the
sorry, I
pie
should have
auction and seen the amazing display that Shelley had made for the Soldotna Chambers pie auction. So I had assumed it was just another one of your amazing treats, but I do look forward to see what you will whip up for us. So I just want to say thank you and welcome.
Other questions of the city clerk? Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I just want to thank Shelley for using some of her latent skip tracing skills and tracking down a witness for us for the presentation tonight on the dog park. Your efforts were appreciated, and the person did have something germane to say, and thank you again.
Any other questions for the city clerk? Seeing none, we will move to additional public comment. Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to address the council at this time on any item? Ms. Orth?
My name is April Orth, and I live in Kenai, Alaska. And I just want to say thank you for passing the ordinance, or passing it to help the dog park. I am not a dog park person. That being said, my dog would eat everybody else's dog, so it's not an option for me. I'm okay with that. However, I have seen the use of our Soldotna Dog Park. The visitors that come in the summer, all through the year, it's very, very beneficial, and a lot of people do congregate, and the neighbors get to know each other, so I saw that as very, very, very beneficial. Not my thing. And I'm also glad that COVID funds were used for that. They were used for the community. I would actually like to know what we have left in COVID funds, and I would like to present possibly that the community can become involved and help have some input on how they're used, so they're not used for personal pet projects, but they're used for actually community, which they were designed for, as I understand it. That's why we're in lockdown. That's why the last emergency order was extended, so that we could get more funds for the community. And I'd like them to see them used that way. So I was very, very happy to learn that $63,000 actually went for a community project that will be long-term. And I just want to put my input in. Thank you.
Take any questions of Ms. Orth? Seeing none, we'll move to additional public comment. Is there anybody else from the general public that'd like to address the council at this time? Mr. Twait. Newly confirmed. Mr. Twait.
All right, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Jeff Twait, 1808 Juliana Drive in Kenai. Try to get this done in 5 minutes. I believe I can. I want to talk to you about the appointment process that we finished tonight. I was surprised when it was postponed at your last meeting. 2 of the council members brought up objections, or not objections, but just inquisitive inquiries as to why. The other 3 didn't say anything and acted like it was a predetermined outcome. I didn't understand it at that time. Later I did. I went and had lunch with Vice Mayor Glendening, and he kind of explained to me what the 4 no votes, or the votes to postpone, were about, which were in part about kind of redesigning the Planning and Zoning Commission a little bit and having someone else be appointed chair, which I'll go on the record and say, had that been brought up to me prior to postponing, I would have been on board with that at the time. I never went out and solicited to be chairman when I was initially voted in, and I certainly haven't tried to hold on to that position ever since. But specifically, that's probably a conversation for another day. I'd like to speak to the process more than anything tonight. When someone steps forward to volunteer for one of these positions, they shouldn't be used as a political pawn or to help drive someone's agenda for the council. If that becomes the new norm, it's going to be very hard to find people to step up and serve. That's just the cold, hard facts of it. Specifically to my appointment, if any of the 4 people that voted to postpone, I would have thought they were going to postpone because they wanted to find out more information. Nobody contacted me except Vice Mayor Glendening, which unfortunately, he knows me the best. He doesn't need to really quiz me about much. He already knows everything about me. Specifically to the newest members, who I don't really know at all, I would have expected a call if that was the reason for postponing, was to get more information. That didn't happen. And if nothing else, you could have went, and maybe you did, went and looked at some of the archived planning and zoning meetings. You can see how I run a meeting and how I present myself and how I treat people. And I will be, again, say, I will open up the floor to anyone that wants to take the chairmanship from me, or with my blessing, if that's a concern, which I heard that it was for some reason. I've served on the planning and zoning for about 16 years now, and I've had probably 16 different councils, the makeup of the people. Many of them were very politically at opposite ends of the spectrum. But even then, almost to a fault, they rolled up their sleeves, they set their agendas and egos aside, and they got the business done for the city. And I was going to say, if you don't believe me, go back and watch some of your last few meetings. But I don't have to do that because it happened again tonight. And for people that are looking to move their family or business to this town, and they want to pull up and see what the local government flavor looks like, this isn't it. This isn't how it works. You should be able to get along together and work together, and it's not happening. I could give examples tonight, sitting right there, of what I see that is just not right. It's toxic. It's got to change, or I guarantee you this will never work. This isn't meant to be this way. I hope, like I said, that the backbiting between council members stops, that some council members and the administration and department heads stops, because there's a lot of good people here. The administration are a great group of people that aren't big ego people that aren't going to listen to anybody's ideas. They may not agree with them, they'll listen to them and bring forth the right avenue to work on them. And so I would like to make sure we're all friends. Even Councilmember Wenger, who chose to vote against me, I've got to sit right next to her for this next year. I want to work with her. Policy-wise, I think we're all in the same direction, moving the same way, but for some reason, this toxic attitude is ridiculous. And I just hope that at some point, sooner than later, it gets fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Tway? Councilmember Wenger?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Since I was called out by name, I'm going to address why I voted no. My concern lies as you came to the body and stood in front of me and spoke for your committee as a whole, that they were prepared and ready for going forth with the land use plan, and you spoke on their behalf and you assured they were ready. And then at the following meeting, it was exactly what I had asked, which was for more time to go through the plan in a work session, and that they weren't prepared because it was postponed. I feel that a good leader would put their ego aside as well and be able to see if there's a struggle within their own commission and not speak for all members of their commission. So when you come to me and you speak on behalf of your members, that doesn't favor well with me. So as Mr. Glendinning may have given you a point, you never reached out to me either and asked me why I had postponed. Vice Mayor Glendinning doesn't speak for me. I was never contacted. Those are my concerns and ultimately why I voted no. And I do hope we can work together. This has really, for me, nothing to do with ego, but within staying in ultimately our lanes and not speaking for other people. I don't appreciate anybody on this body speaking for me and putting any words if there was concerns on why I would have voted for postponement. My number and email is listed, and I too was never contacted. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Tway? Comments? Vice Mayor Glendinning?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I thought Chairman to-be, again, Dwight, and I had a very productive meeting, and I thought it was a frank discussion. And I expressed my desire for broadening the leadership base. I talked about maybe some changes to how we do business regarding conditional use permits, procedures for testifying. And I asked you to reach out and see if there was any other people who were willing to exhibit leadership. Okay, and we had a subsequent conversation and revealed your answer. I'll just leave it at that. But as far as postponing it, I still had work to do. Questions of our city attorney to ask to make sure that I would style my question correctly as to what type of background information, you can call it training or whatever, that maybe not you, but the commission would require. And then also just a touch-up on procedures on how we handle quasi-judicial affairs. And it's just, if you had a horse and your neck reining, that's all it involved. And it's not my intent to have offended you in any way. It was just the timing of availability to communicate. The other meeting was, there's people weren't around that I needed to talk to. So if you feel the need to communicate with us, come again anytime. Yeah, just bring it. We'll do just fine. And we've worked together, and we've not really had any real differences other than just technique or maybe a minor difference on a vote. Both when I was on this Planning and Zoning Commission, both when I was representative on the Planning Commission and at the Borough Planning Commission, and then when I was a city councilor and on the Borough Planning Commission, I always came to the meetings and always gave the best information that I could. And I'm trying to do this now at this point in time. So thank you for your service, and we'll see you next meeting.
Absolutely. I would agree that we had a very productive meeting. There was a lot of good ideas that I totally am in agreement with on that. So, and just to, if I could, to speak to Councilmember Wingers, I will go back and look at the meeting that I did speak on behalf of. What I thought I said was, I can only speak for myself, but I believe our Planning and Zoning Commission is ready. I believe that's the exact words I used, but I will go back and verify that. Because I never intended to say I am the sole voice for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Like I said, the beauty of having it on record is I will go back and I will look. Okay.
Any further questions of Chairman or Mr. Twait? Chair. Councilman Nexon.
If you go sideways on any one issue, I won't fire you. I wouldn't fire anybody. Any one thing, eating two things probably. So long as you're, pardon me?
Three. You said how about three?
I'm not following what Mr. Glendenning's saying
He's
here.
just trying to find a benchmark. He's
Oh.
just trying to find a benchmark.
Okay. Very good. But anyway, thank you. Did you get reorganized, or did Planning and Zoning get reorganized? You said something about that in your thing. I'm not really following what you're talking about.
Well, I will just say that I did reach out to a couple of the people that Vice Mayor Glendenning mentioned that he thought would be good chairs, and I agreed. They both would be. Both of them, one of them in particular, plans on submitting his resignation probably before his term's up this year. And the other one said he did not want to do it. But like I said, I will open our meeting, and if I got to twist an arm to see if someone wants to do it, I would be like I said, like I mentioned when Jim and I talked, being the chair somewhat hamstrings you from being able to make motions and drive a lot of the conversation. And I think with some of this training we're going to have, maybe we'll get a little bit more of that from some of the other commissioners, and that's makes everybody better, I think. So let's cross our fingers and hope. We got smart people on there, so I think it's just a matter of getting a little more comfortable and addressing Commissioner Woodard. Absolutely smart lady, and I mentioned to you that first year I sat back and did nothing but listen. There was a fair amount of intimidating men up there at the time, and I just sat back and gathered knowledge. And I think she's doing the same thing, and I think she's going to be 100% great. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Twait.
okay.
Is there anybody else from the general public that would like to address the council at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to council comments. Councilmember Petty.
I have no comments, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sonart.
I'd like to wish everybody a happy 2022 year, and I hope it's off to a good start. And again, I just want to say thank you to all of you, even people out there who have made my first few months on this council very welcoming and very warm and gracious. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yeah, it was an interesting meeting tonight, and I don't know, I come out of the oil field and maybe it's a little more bare knuckle, and hopefully I can throttle back somewhat, but yet if we don't speak with passion, if we don't speak with conviction, if we don't speak determinedly, if we don't speak our heart, if we don't speak what's on our mind, then we're not serving the public either. So again, I apologize to you. I was probably had my microphone on while I was doing my grunt, and just be thankful I didn't break wind. So thank you much.
You came from the oil patch, I came from the hockey rink, so it's not very good. Yeah, I understand. Councilman Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I would like to start off with welcoming Shelley aboard again and thank our HEA linemen. We know we've been hit with storms down here. In the same time that we've seen power outages that lasted 20 hours for some folks in the Sterling area. At the same time, other parts of our state were being devastated. If you followed the extreme weather our interior of our state seen over the last couple weeks, Fairbanks and North Pole had ultimately been shut down with freezing rain. Delta Junction as well. Delta Junction lost structures, businesses, the IGA store's roof collapsed, the gas station roof collapsed. And that was just really the start of the devastation we've seen across our state. I was caught up in the Wasilla-Palmer storms that we just had. And let me tell you, we've all seen the pictures on Facebook, and it doesn't even do a lick of justice to the destruction that those communities seen. If you have friends in that area, just know that they are going to have a long path of recovery. It literally looked like tornadoes went through their city. We experienced 84-mile-an-hour winds the first night we were stuck there. The night before, it was 97-mile-an-hour winds. I believe the Kenai at the same time when we were having power outages, the winds were about 40-mile-an-hour winds. So definitely prayers to these affected areas in our state. Ultimately, we're all neighbors. We have friends in these areas. Some of us have family in these areas. I also would like to address the egos. I myself am glad that Ms. Sonart has had a warm welcoming. That's something I've never received. I've faced a lot of accusations over the year I have served. I came back from being off-grid after the new year to more accusations. Accusations without evidence. It's getting old. We work really hard to gaslight council members. We work really hard against council members. We would be more effective as a body if we worked together. I have done nothing but want to work together as a body. And I know I'm not your pick. I wasn't Tim Navarre. Tim wasn't the seat. That's who you wanted. That's not who you got. Ultimately, we have 2 more years of working together, and I would hope our administration and our body will start to work together because the constant gaslighting, working against people, accusations are getting old, and I hope that at the beginning of the year we can start off on a better foot and move forward for what's best for our representing our constituents. Thank you.
Councilmember Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. No comments. Happy New Year, everybody.
Thank you. Councilmember Nexon.
Thank you. I want to thank Shelley for her first meeting with us, and it's one of very many that she's done, but I'm glad that she's here, and I look forward to the whole next year. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we adjourn, I just want to remind everybody to please sign the letter to the governor before you go tonight, so Ms. Sainer can send that off. And seeing no other business before this body, we are adjourned.
And don't forget to grab some cookies. There's a bunch.